back. So what we've got now is we've got our world and our terrain. And what we're going to do is add in some game mechanics here now. Let's add in some hazards that will kill our player and send us back to the spawn. And let's add some items that we can pick up to earn points that we can add onto our leaderboard. So two very important parts of a lot of games. And then with this, you'll be able to have this understanding of how this works within Roblox, because it's a little different, and then expand off of that for your own kind of games. So I think what we could do is we could make this pink sphere here, because it's on fire. That looks like it's something that's dangerous. Let's use that to create our first bit of code that if we touch this, if we collide with this, if we connect with this, that's the Roblox terminology, then it's going to run a function that will destroy the player who is touching it. So there's a lot of kind of computational concepts here that we're going to cover, and some scripting as well. So yeah, follow along, and you can always pause this video and take your time to make sure that all of the code is typed and in the correct place. Let's just run this again to remind ourselves of where we are within our game. So we have our spawn plate, and there is our glowing wedge. Let's just take a look. Now something, before we even begin, something's very interesting. We didn't actually place our sphere there. It's ended up in the water, whereas actually we had it placed here on the side, and we can see that it's kind of rotating as well. The fire's coming out the other side. So that's something we're going to need to look into as to why that's happening. And very much the same as I said before about fixing objects in place. Spheres by definition are not to allow them to roll around the world. So let's just click on our sphere. Let's scroll down into our properties, and as well as locking it into place, we also need to make sure it is anchored as well. So now this is fixed within that 3D space. Not only is it locked, meaning nothing can push it or rotate it, it itself is anchored in the world, meaning it can't roll by itself relative to the terrain. So we've currently got it on a bit of a slope on the hill, but that means it's going to stay where it is. Let's just play and double check that that is in fact true. I'm just going to run around and be sure. Yep, there we go. So it's now fixed within the world. It is an object that we can stand on, etc. And it's not going to move. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make some code that when we connect with this object, it will trigger the inbuilt Roblox effect of what happens when you die. Now we all know that we can click on Roblox, reset our character. This triggers the inbuilt function that if we die, we then respawn back at our spawn location, base plate here. So what we want to have happen is that exact mechanic of when we touch a dangerous object. What this means is if we have some code that when we touch something that is a danger to kill the player, send it back, we can create obbies, because then we can create lava floors, we can create obstacle blocks that you need to jump over. So there's a lot of variants that we can do with this. I'm just going to use the sphere for now because it's really obvious, and then we can look at how we can use this same code elsewhere as well. So in order to make this work, we need to create a script, and script is a piece of code, and we attach it to this object, and then the code will run the minute we press play to run the game. The code is running, and it uses what's called event listeners or callbacks, or there's different terminology, but across all languages, JavaScript, other kind of coding languages, this is an idea where you create a set of instructions that will happen when a condition is met. And when that condition is met, so the code is constantly listening, has somebody collided with me yet? No, they haven't. Okay, don't worry. Has someone collided with me? Yes, they have. now run that set of instructions. And that's what's used in a lot of coding, in a lot of games, and just even extends to things that work on the web as well, within browsers. Has the user clicked on that yet? No. Okay, well, don't do anything. If they have, and so on. So it's this understanding of the logic of the way in which that works, and we're going to use Roblox's scripting language, which is called Lua, which has been around for a long time and is used in a lot of kind of game engines, and we're going to create this. So we will click onto our object. I'm just going to line myself up here. We'll click onto our object inside the Explorer. I'm just going to minimize some of these arrows here. So this is our pink sphere, and on the right hand side, whenever we select any of these in the Explorer, any object, a plus button can appear at the side. And if we click on that plus button, it's enabling us to create something that will be attached to that object. And we're going to pick script. This is going to open up a new kind of tab within our main window. Don't worry, your game hasn't disappeared. We can see that if we click back, it's still here. We can tab between both our main game window and this script that we are just starting to write. Let's just check. Here's our pink sphere, here's the fire effects, and here's our script. Okay, I'm actually going to rename this so that we know that this is like our hazard script, or our kill player script, etc. So let's right click and do rename. I'm actually going to change this to kill player, and you'll notice that it updates here within this world as well. Now every time you create a new script, there is this line of code, print hello world, and we can delete that. That's just something that's there. That's hello world is a coding beginner's first thing that you program, and has been since the 1980s. So it's just a little throwback there to gaming. We don't need that. What we might need to do though is put comments to ourselves in our code to remind ourselves, what is this code going to do? Because there's nothing worse than writing a bunch of code, making something work. Then perhaps you don't work on this game for 3 months, 2 weeks, a few days, and you come back to it and you can't actually remember what a lot of the stuff did, and so it's really useful to make comments as we're going along. And the way in which we do that is 2 minus symbols next to each other, and you will notice the code changes to green. This is a comment, and you'll notice that everything else is written in green text afterwards, and that means that that is not code that's going to be run by Roblox. This is just to remind ourselves of what this bit of particular code is going to do. Alright then, let's think about what I said about how we're going to make this work. We need to know that when this object is touched, it's going to trigger a function. So we need 2 things. We need to write the function that destroys the player, and then we need to write the code that sets this up as a listener, so that if somebody touches us, run that block of code that then kills the player. That's the logical steps that we're going to need to do. So first off, the very first thing we need to do is get a variable, and I'm going to try to explain a lot of these coding terminologies. If you already know about coding, then maybe you might want to watch this on fast forward, but if you don't, it's a good chance to kind of understand a few basics, and I'll try to explain them in as much detail as possible. We need to make a local variable, so we're going to use the word local, and what we need to get is the object that this script is attached to. So let's just look over here. At the moment, this kill player script is attached to the pink sphere. But if we wanted to duplicate this script and attach it to the wedge, maybe the wedge will kill players as well, Aha, sneaky, it doesn't look like it, but maybe it does. What we don't want to do is reference the exact name of the object. What we want to do is we want to get the object that this script is attached to. Yeah, this is very useful for modularity and reusing. So I'm just going to say local hazard is equal to the scripts dot parent and a semicolon at the end as well. So this is a variable that we have created called hazard, and it gets whatever the script is parented to in the hierarchy. So kill player is parented to sphere pink, our pink sphere now. So that's going to be passed in hazard. So the hazard is now the object that this is attached to. And what we can set up is that event listener, because basically if somebody touches that hazard, i.e. the pink sphere, then we want to run a little function that will destroy the player. So let's put that in first. I'm going to leave myself a bit of space. We put this at the end. This sets up the event listener at the end. And then in these lines in between, we will write that function that actually destroys the player. So what we want to say is hazard dot touched with a capital T. You'll notice that Roblox is giving me some autocomplete as I'm typing along. It's giving me hints about what it thinks that I'm going to be wanting to type in. You'll also notice, say I just stopped there and I tried to save this and run my game. Not only is it telling me if I hover over it that there's a syntax error, you can see that it's underlined in red, which gives you a visual warning that it's not finished. And if I click at the end, you can see it's telling me it's an incomplete statement, which is right. Now I want to have a colon, and then I want the connect, and then at the very end, I'm just going to leave that without a semicolon at the end. Now Roblox can work with Lua, doesn't have to have semicolons, so you often decide whether you are going to use them or not use them. Most languages require a semicolon at the end. What I'm going to do is remove that semicolon from line 3 at the end of the script.parent, and I'm going to go with the convention in here that we, at the end of each line, we don't need to put that in. If you're watching other tutorials or looking at other coding languages to learn, you may see that happen. Just stick to one style within inside Roblox Studio. So I'm going to go without that. What we want to do now, this is going to automatically listen for, has somebody touched the hazard, which will be our player. So have I walked into it? Then it's going to connect to it a function, and we need to give the name of the function. We haven't written it yet, but we need to give the name of the function. So I'm just going to call this one kill player. That is the name of the function. You'll see it's underlined in blue because it says it's unknown because we haven't created it yet. So let's create it. We're going to come in here into line 6 and we're going to make this function. Local function. So a function is a set of instructions that are going to run when it is called. So it's like making a list of instructions, giving that list a name. So let me give a really boring thing like brushing your teeth. There are a set of instructions, and you know that if you have to brush your teeth, there's a set of instructions to follow. It's very, very similar. So let's make our local function. We've got to make sure we spell it the exact way. Kill player, the exact way that we've called it here. You will notice that I've used a lowercase k and then a capital P. This is what's known as upper camel case. So this is a convention that I would strongly recommend that you follow because it's industry standard. The first word is always lowercase, and if you have to join more words together, every other word has a capital letter. It's easy to see at a glance, and it makes sense. We should always call our variables and our functions logically what they intend to do. It makes real sense. There's no point just giving it, a few letters. because later we won't know what exactly that it does. So I'm trying to also impart on you, as well as getting started, a few best practice things that will help you if you wish to continue developing games, coding, or moving into this area in the industry. We need a left and right bracket, curved bracket, and actually what we need to know is who has touched this. Okay, we need to know exactly who has touched it, because we could be playing this by ourselves. There's only likely us to touch it, of course, but what if there's 6 people playing the game? We need to get the reference to the object of who has touched it. So exactly like here, we did this idea of getting a variable of what is attached. We're going to need to kind of know who has been connected. So I am just going to do other inside, and we're going to get the value of who has touched us. Now I pressed enter there, and you can see it automatically gave me an end. So whenever we start a function, we have to use end to end that function. And you'll also notice it's given us a little arrow here on the side. That allows us to just minimize all of the code. If this script was several hundred lines long, it could be quite tedious scrolling through to find everything that we want. Okay, let's come inside and start to do some code. I'm going to try to explain this as much as possible so that it makes sense. We need a local variable, and we're going to call this one the part parent, so that we can understand we're getting the parent part, and we'll say that it is equal to our other dot parent. Very similar kind of terminology from above. So other will give me who has touched this. I would like to get the parent object of who has touched this, because it's likely to be a player. I would like to get the parent object, and from that I need to get out something called the humanoid. Now, how do I know this? I'm going to show you something in a second that we haven't looked at before. Before I come on and code this, I know that I need to get the humanoid, because all players have a humanoid attached to them. How do I know this? Well, apart from reading the documentation, let me just come back and press play inside our game. Something that I'd like you to now notice, because so far we've just been very interested in running and playing our game. Something very interesting. On the right hand side, we can still see our Explorer. And if we look and open up our Players tab, this wasn't there before in the editor. Now I can see myself, and if I open up myself, I can see that there's a lot of stuff going on under here. A backpack, starter gear, player GUI, player scripts, etc. And this is now my humanoid character that's attached. And we can see that there's a lot of properties that are set up to this. I can even see what team I'm on, all sorts of things like that. So because there is this symbol here, this is actually a humanoid that is created. So I'm going to press stop. Right now you see under players it's completely empty because we're in the editor mode. So I know that when there's multiple players playing, they are all created, they all have their own separate little set of variables that are assigned to them from the server. So I know that that's how I can get hold of, is it a player that has actually interacted with me? So let's say local humanoid is equal to our part parent find first child, and it's going to try to find the humanoid object that is attached to the player. Now this is inbuilt Roblox stuff, okay? This is stuff that's specific to them. So what I'm saying is when somebody collides with this hazard, which is the pink sphere, get who's touching it, get the parent object, so the player object, then search through until you find their humanoid, which is the actual, the head, the body, the legs, the arms. Find that. And if it is an actual humanoid, then I want to set its health to 0. If it is an actual humanoid object, so in other words, if this local humanoid says part parent, find first child, what if it doesn't exist? Like, what if actually the object that's collided with it isn't a humanoid player? It's not a player. So just in case, we should put this in, that if it is a humanoid, then what we're going to do is we can say the humanoid dot health, which is an inbuilt variable, is equal to 0. Now we could instead, we could have, when we touched it, take away the health so that our damage slowly goes down, but this will just set up the insta death. So now this should completely work for us. This is set up as an event listener to listen that if anything touches this object, run it. Find if it's a humanoid. If it's a humanoid, immediately set your health to 0. Well, let's have a look, shall we? Let's run this and see. Okay, here I am. I'm going to move over. I'm going to collide with this. There we go. Instant death, and I instantly respawn back to where I was. That is inbuilt part. So we didn't have to code the animation. We didn't have to say that the player's now dead. All of that's handled by Roblox. It's very difficult actually when you start getting into Roblox Studio, because lots of things are built and done and set up for you. You can of course extend or change or manipulate them, but lots of things have to be done through the code. So because things are built for you, it can be just a different way of when you get started. Can I jump over it? Of course I can't. There we go. 3 seconds to respawn time. Okay, amazing. So we have something now that works. Now, if I want more of these pink spheres, this kill player script is already on this sphere. So I could right click and duplicate the sphere. I now have a second one. I could click the move. And I'm absolutely going to move it over. Where shall I put it? I'm just going to put it over there maybe. Let's focus, and maybe I'll have it sticking out a bit. Pop it over here. So now we don't have to do any more code. Everything is exactly the same because the script gets the object and runs it. Just to be sure, okay, so I've got this one over here. And there we go. Health done, respawn, back I go. So what's interesting now is we could start to utilize this as either potentially, bad pickups, or we could start to build like an obby where we need to leap over that object without touching it. So there's a few things that we can do. What if we didn't want it to be a pink sphere that we touch? Remember I said we could sneakily make the wedge also potentially damage us. What we would need to do is we would need to duplicate the script. Let's right click and duplicate, and make sure we then click and drag this script onto our wedge so that it becomes parented in the hierarchy. So now our script is attached to the wedge, that if we touch the wedge now, that's actually going to kill us as well. The script is just getting whatever object it's attached to. Okay. Let's have a little run around, shall we? Watch me run. Oh, there we go. On the wedge as well. Okay. That's the first part of our code in. So now we know we could create a brand new part. Maybe I would like to put down a block. Let's move this block. Let's scale this up. Make him, maybe I'm just going to move it. I'm going to pop it just below. And I'm going to now take this kill player script and I'm going to take it off the wedge and I'm going to put it on this new part instead. And the new part I'm going to rename as glowing bar. Why not? So now my wedge is okay. The pink sphere has the kill player script. The pink sphere has the kill player script. But so does this glowing bar. So if I look, maybe I'm just going to we'll make it a little bit harder. So now I've got to leap over this. Alright, let's do this. I'm going to keep my camera the way it is so that you can see this on the video. Let's get ready. So the wedge doesn't now. Uh-oh, where's my bar gone? Why has that fell down? What did we forget to do? Right, let's come back. We need to click on the glowing bar. Let's scroll down. Let's make sure it's anchored and locked in place. Because we can see that I actually have it sort of floating rather than... yeah, it's kind of floating. It's not massively attached to the... yeah, so we just have to make sure because it will drop down because of gravity until it connects with something. All right, let's try again. Let's try again, shall we? There it is. Okay. I'm really bad at obbies. So, for anyone who doesn't know what an obby is, it's short for obstacle course. Let's see if I can leap it. I made it. Oh my gosh, I actually made it. There we go. Just to prove that it does actually destroy me if I hit it. I was just spectacularly okay then. Let's try again. Watch me from the side. Oh dear, terrible. Alright, so right away with just this one bit of code and a bit of design work, we could start to build, you know, an obstacle course that means when we need to get to the end. In order to make this a bit of a fun game though, what we should really do is also have something that when we connect to it, it gives us a score, it gives us points. And even better than that, we want a leaderboard, because if we're going to have our friends joining in, we want to know who's got the most points. So join me in the next video where we add that bit of script.